The following program is a sports handicapping show. That's right, we will be discussing sports betting and all kinds of other gambling stuff, including game predictions. As you know, not every bet will win, but we do our best. Feel free to use this information at your own risk, and remember, wager wisely, folks. Broadcasting from the Vegas Video Network studios, live from the Las Vegas Strip, Covers.com presents Vegas SportsDay. And now from the sports betting capital of the world, here are your hosts, Teddy and the Professor.
It's Tuesday in Sin City, and you are watching Vegas SportsDay, the pulse of the sports betting world. I'm your host, Teddy Covers, joined as always by my esteemed colleague, the Professor, Dave Malinsky. The part of Mr. Malinsky today will be played by fellow Covers expert, Scott Spreitzer. Scott?
I wish I could play the part of Dave Malinsky. I can't. I'm not a professor. I'm no Marianne either, but we'll do our best to get through this report. But I'm going to tell you what, we're going to break down the NBA. We're going to break down the second half of the season, teams to play on, to play against. We're also going to dive in a little bit to what's going on up in Sacramento as they have signed a tentative agreement for a new stadium, a new arena, and we're going to break it down as to whether this is going to give the home team Kings a boost or not. And finally, we're also going to talk about the Indiana Hoosiers, 16-1 straight up this season at famed Assembly Hall in Bloomington, yet they are a home dog. I'll say one thing, Teddy. It's good to be sitting next to you. I tried real hard to get Dave Malinsky to do the old Vegas Sports Day back in November when I filled in for you, but I just couldn't get the prof to do it.
It wasn't going to happen. Yeah, getting Malinsky gets excited, but not on air. He keeps it low key. But of course, Dave will be back with us tomorrow. But for today, Scott, busy weekend in sports. What's your first take on a Tuesday? What'd you see that you want to share with our viewing audience?
Well, it's real funny. I mean, I guess we got to talk about what goes on from the world of handicapping, and had a tremendous season thus far in college basketball, but talked about it a little bit too much last week on a lot of TV and radio shows, and we took it in the shorts, so to speak, on Saturday. Had a lot of close losses down the stretch in the final minute of regulation and overtime. But what I really took from other things that were happening in the world of sports, how about the Wichita State Shockers? I've talked about this team over and over this year. They've avoided flat spots down the stretch. They've now wrapped up the regular season. They had a hard time cracking that top 25 with the AP pollsters, and now they're having a tough time climbing up in the polls, although they deserve to be ranked higher than they are. Can't wait to watch this team in the Missouri Valley Conference Tournament and beyond. And I noticed on the Oscars the other night, Teddy, it was a chalk night with the only underdog, believe it or not. Hard to say she's an underdog, Meryl Streep. Terrible show. Good job, Meryl.
Yeah, well, the chalk came through at the Oscars. I want to talk about this Saturday before the All-Star game, where we saw not one, not two, but the three biggest dogs on the board all cash. Tony Parker in the skills competition. I'm going to use the general consensus line. He was about plus 600 to win that competition. Then we saw Jeremy Evans. Who? Yeah, Jeremy Evans win the slam dunk contest. There were only 4 contestants, yet Evans was plus 350 in that. Kevin Love, the biggest dog in the three-point shooting contest, the last guy to enter. Boom. Cashes your ticket at plus 750. Just briefly, talking about the power of the moneyline parlay. Had you bet $100 on a 3-teamer with Parker plus 600, Evans plus 350, and Love plus 750. 3-team, that's all you need to cash in. $100 pays $26,675. Send an email in if you did cash that ticket. I don't know anyone else. Anyone that did. I certainly wasn't one. But just something to think about with those underdog moneyline parlays. People want to make a little, bet a little to win a lot. Don't do it with a regular parlay. Those underdog moneyline parlays are a way to turn a very little into a very lot. But be sure that you check your own sportsbook's rules on those moneyline parlays. There are many books out there that won't pay more than, say, 20-1, somewhere in that range. All right, let's transition and talk about what we got in the email box this past weekend. We got a real good letter come in from Aram, and it brings up an excellent theme to discuss, especially based on your first take, Scott. Here's a letter from Aram, and it's what he wants to know. Quote, I commend you greatly for being able to do the show daily, which inevitably means having to do it during losing streaks. During losing streaks, I don't want to see or talk to anyone. But you guys get up there and keep going. How do you do it? Good question, Aram. How do we answer them, Scott?
First of all, you got to have that extra layer of epidermis. If you're going to be in this business, there's no doubt about it. You learn that early on to be able to get over the tough streaks. You know, I think Dave Malinsky talked about this back in November, and he was talking about you have to have that emotional place to go to, that mental place to go to when you're on a losing streak and you can't seem to get things to turn around for a few days. Or you have to have, for me, a physical place to go to. What I tend to do, and I'm not talking about a 1 or 2 day situation where I've lost Teddy, but what I tend to do is I like to go to my favorite Japanese restaurant, the wife and I. We'll get a babysitter, keep the kid at home, favorite Japanese restaurant, favorite Japanese food we order. We order a couple of drinks, she drives, and I'll tell you what, we'll spend a couple of hours there and I feel better. I come home, I bust out the tenor sax. Been playing the alto and tenor since I was 8 years old. I go up into my little room, it's kind of soundproof, wife stays in the other room, and I play little sax and I get away from all the crazy stuff. So in a nutshell, what I do, I basically have a great dinner with great food, I have great drinks, and then I go home and have great sax. Well, maybe a lot of sax.
That's certainly a recipe for success, Scott. But of course, you know, all right, I'm going through a losing streak. Let's go shell out a couple $100 on a nice Japanese dinner. No. This is what we got to do. And really, in my mind, the show helps me in that regard. And one thing that I've been doing some form of radio or podcast or TV for the better part of the last 10 years on a daily basis here in Las Vegas. And I find it really helps me when I'm struggling because you have to get that mental focus. When you've lost your edge, when you're searching to find your way, the fact that I've got a daily show that I have to come on the air and look like I know what I'm talking about and sound like I know what I'm talking about and sometimes actually know what I'm talking about, to me, that's a very positive thing because it helps wipe away the previous day. Doesn't matter how hot you are or how cold you are, every day you wake up, you're 0-0. My clients certainly think that whether I'm on a hot streak or a cold streak, you win 10 in a row, you lose a game, you're an idiot, you know, what's wrong with you? But the bottom line is that's one of the best and one of the worst things about this business. No memory whatsoever. The games don't have any memory, and the bets don't have any memory. The bottom line, however, is that if you can get to a place where you wipe the slate clean with a good night's sleep or whatever you want to do and get up in the morning and make it happen, you know, with a fresh mindset, in my mind, that's the best way to go. Anything to add, Scott?
Well, just in all seriousness, I think, like you just said, you wipe the slate clean. Winning begets winning, losing begets losing. And when you're on a winning streak for several days, man, those plays are jumping off the line sheet at you. Sides are jumping all over the place. Play me, play me. When you're on a losing streak, you tend to overthink the process. You tend to overthink what you're doing, and sometimes you leave a lot of winners sitting on the table rather than wagering on them with your wallet. So what Teddy's saying, what I'm saying about going out to the dinner, I really think you got to get out of the house, get away from the process of handicapping the games, and really clear your mind. But for me, whether I'm on a 10-0 streak, as Teddy said, or an 0-10 slide, the bottom line is the next day is a brand new day no matter what, and you try to get that out of your mind. But again, when you're winning, man, I'm telling you, winning does beget winning, and those plays jump off the sheet at you.
That's a nice feeling when you have it. Great question, Aram. Thanks for sending that in. And please keep those emails coming. We've got a great one in before the show today that hopefully will be on air tomorrow or certainly later on in the week. The email address, of course, sportsday@covers.com. You can follow us on Twitter at Vegas Sports Day. And let's not forget about the Covers.com community. Active threads and discussions going right now. Covers.com/posting for.
Coming up next, we're going to discuss the NBA second half, our bet on teams, our bet against teams. He's Teddy. I'm Scott. That's next on Market Watch.
Are you looking for the latest odds, the fastest scores, the most important trends, and the best matchups and stats? Are you looking for the key late-breaking information that can make you a winner? Well, Covers.com has the answer. The world's largest sports betting community gives you a front row seat in the heart of the action, from the opening lines to the final scores. If you want to stay ahead of the game, Covers covers the numbers.
This is David Ivey from Pub Crawl. It's funny because it's David from. You should just leave it on. Hi, I'm David Ivey from Pub Crawl, and you're watching the Vegas Video Network. And scene.
The NBA All-Star Weekend is over, and that means the second half of the season begins today. We're not going to do a post-mortem on what happened over the first half. We spent the last 2 months talking about what happened over the first half of the season. Today, instead, we're going to look at Market Watch, and Scott and I are going to identify teams that we like and teams that we don't like from a point spread perspective over the second half of the campaign. We're going to go through a list of 8 teams, a bet on and a bet against for each of us from each of the 2 conferences. So let's get it started. Now I'm going to take my first bet on team, and that's going to be from the Western Conference. I'm going to take a look at the Houston Rockets as being a potential moneymaker. Houston, way underneath the radar. And again, we're talking about a team, you ask people who's got the best record in the NBA since, the last 5 weeks. Let's call it the last 6 weeks, I should say. January 13th. And people are going to say, yeah, Miami, yeah, Oklahoma City. Ooh, Chicago's been playing good. Ooh, San Antonio was hot. Who's number 5 on that list? The Houston Rockets. Quiet, underneath the radar. We're talking about a team with great depth. They legitimately go 10 or 11 deep. I want that over the second half of this NBA season. We're talking about a team with relatively low market expectations. The Rockets aren't priced like Miami or San Antonio or Chicago or the other elite teams that have been ripping up the league. The Rockets, no all-stars, no superstars on that team. Kevin Martin, he might be close. He's certainly not a household name, and he's not someone that's going to affect a point spread based on his name alone. And, of course, one of the things I love for teams to bet on, I want teams with first-year head coaches. They're still learning. They're still buying into the message. And when you have these teams in the first year of the head coach's era, oftentimes you'll see a team get progressively better down the stretch, as opposed to some of the teams that we talk about later that we're looking to bet against that may well get progressively worse. So we have good execution during crunch time, a first-year head coach, no superstar, low expectations, great depth. I have a buy sign on the Houston Rockets right now.
Happen to like the way that bench has been playing, by the way, for Kevin McHale and the Houston Rockets quite a bit down the stretch. But I'll tell you what, the team I'm looking at in the Western Conference on the uptick is the Memphis Grizzlies. I like the way they finished the first half going into the All-Star break. 7-3 straight-up run, got them to 19-15 overall, and they are within earshot of the San Antonio Spurs within the division, roughly about 5 games back as we head into the second half of the season. So they've got to stay focused. They know they can catch San Antonio, or at least they believe they can. They also have to watch out because they're 7th in the Western Conference standings, but they're only a game and a half over 9th place Denver. They've got to stay focused. I believe they will. I love Marc Gasol. I love Conley at the point. I don't think these 2 guys get enough credit in a national the way the national media looks at these 2 players. I also think that when Rudy Gay is on the floor, I like this team because all of a sudden they're smaller, but that means that Rudy Gay and also Tony Allen are going to play the forward positions. And I haven't even mentioned yet O.J. Mayo. Of course, if this team makes it to the postseason, then they get the big man back, and that, of course, is Zach Randolph. And then I think they're a real good shot. I saw 60-1 on Memphis recently as they headed into the All-Star break. Now, true odds probably 150-1 for a team that's going to finish in that 6 to 8 range in the standings. But for the second half of the season, as far as the spread is concerned, I like Memphis. How about this schedule? It's not overwhelming. Road games include Toronto, Golden State, Phoenix, Denver, Sacramento, and Portland, and Milwaukee. They do play at Staples against both LA teams. And some of the homers, Detroit, Lakers, Toronto, Washington, Minnesota. Not overwhelming. I like Memphis in the second half of the season.
Now let's talk about some bet against teams from the Western Conference. And I'm kind of bummed I had to put this team on here as my bet against squad because coming into the season, they were arguably my strongest bet on team in the NBA. They certainly made a lot of money at the Rose Garden over the first month, 6 weeks of the season. But we have seen these Portland Trailblazers crash down to earth in recent weeks. I don't think it's going to get better for Portland. I think it's going to get worse. We talked about all the positives for Houston. Here are some negatives for Portland. Depth? Nuh-uh. No quality depth on this Blazers squad. We saw that consistently as they failed to cover on the second night of back-to-backs throughout the first half of the season. Point guard play, Ray Felton has been struggling and struggling mightily. They have no one behind them. It's a real problem for Portland. Poor play at the point is an issue. And instead of a first-year head coach that the players know, hey, this guy's going to be here for a while, I better buy into the system. In Portland, we have a veteran head coach, and a veteran head coach who's on the hot seat right now. Nate McMillan gets closer and closer to being fired with every loss that the Blazers have taken. And, of course, you have to look at the market expectations. Portland started out like gangbusters. The market still thinks they are one of the 3 or 4 best teams in the West. Right now, I'm not convinced they're even in the top 8. Give me the Portland Trailblazers as a team to fade over the second half of the campaign.
Looking at the Utah Jazz out of the Western Conference as a team on the downturn, well, they've already been down when they're on the road. It's a big home road dichotomy. Not crazy about the chemistry of this team. I'm going to keep it simple. If you look at this team, 11 of their next 16 games between March 3rd and March 28th come on the road, where they're just 3-11 straight up. Now, some of those road games include Dallas, Cleveland, Philly, and Chicago. How about their home games? They played pretty well at home. Miami, Minnesota, Oklahoma City, and Denver. I expect that home record to take some hits also with the Utah Jazz. So my down-tick team for the second half of the season, not just away from home where they've been bad all first half of the season, but also on their home court, is the Utah Jazz.
Let's switch to the Eastern Conference right now, and the team I want to spotlight as a potential bet on for the second half of the campaign. I'm going to look at the Motor City Madmen, the Detroit Pistons, a team, again, we talk about the concepts that we're looking for bet on teams. Well, depth. Pistons got plenty of depth. The problem has not been depth, and the injuries really not a factor for Detroit. They can withstand 2 or 3 major injuries because of the quality depth they have on that team. Low expectations? There are no expectations in Detroit right now. The betting market doesn't expect anything out of the Pistons. And frankly, when we talk about national media coverage, there's none in Detroit these days. Again, you have the no superstars. There's not anything that's drawing attention to this team. You have that first-year head coach in Lawrence Frank, and I'm a big Lawrence Frank believer. If you're not a Lawrence Frank believer, go watch some game film of the Pistons over the first 10 games of the season versus the 10 games before the All-Star break. You'll see a completely different team in a matter of 2 months' time with Frank. This is a team that got off to a 4-20 straight-up start. The market's never going to look at them this year, and yet 10-2 against the spread the last 12 games before the break. I think that is a point spread record. I'm not going to say 10-2 the rest of the way. You're not going to hit an 83% long term. But I do think there is money to be made with the Detroit Pistons as my Eastern Conference highlight team as a bet on for the second half of the campaign. Scott?
Well, LeBron James is fading in that Cleveland rearview mirror quicker and quicker. Objects are not closer than they would appear. And I like the way this kid Kyrie Irving is playing. I mean, he plays with 3 things: confidence, and a little bit more confidence. Love the fact that this kid can pull it down and drive the paint against the best of them, and he has no fear. It's not an overconfidence. He just simply believes in what he can do on the floor. He can drive the paint, he can step back, he can drain the 3. And I like some of the players that the Cavaliers feature on the defensive end. You're talking about guys like Sessions and G. And, of course, you're going to get Varejao back in the next couple of weeks. I think the Cavaliers are kind of flying under the radar. Now, here's the thing. I've talked about in a couple of instances already about schedules that are favorable to one player or the other, either on or against certain teams. Cleveland doesn't have an easy schedule, but that might play into our benefit because the Cavaliers are going to be playing some marquee teams. They're going to be getting big point spreads, especially before Varejao returns, and I like Cleveland getting value in the second half of the season. The Cavaliers, my bet on team.
Bet against for the Eastern Conference, and I'm going to take a look at a team that I'm going to explain exactly why they're sitting at 20-14 right now. I don't expect them to be sitting at 20-14 or with a record 6 games over 500 by the time this season is over. And, of course, that squad is the Atlanta Hawks. The Hawks, 20-14 straight up. You look at it, you break it down. Well, they're 14-1 straight up against teams with losing record. Every time Atlanta tries to step up in class, they've done it a couple times. We saw them do it against Orlando and get a win before the All-Star break. But 6-13 straight up against teams with winning records. That, friends, is a real dichotomy. So maybe Atlanta's a type of team you can comfortably lay some points with, but in any of these pick-em range type games, in any of these plus price games, the Hawks have not stepped up well in class. I don't think they will step up well in class down the stretch. Al Horford, if he comes back at all, it's going to be in April, potentially late April. Not convinced we're going to see him before this season's done. No depth for Atlanta, limited interior play, and a team that offensively really has struggled. I expect those struggles to continue, and as their schedule toughens, I expect more losses to pile up. Eastern Conference bet against? Take a look at Atlanta.
Lynn Sanity, love the guy. I love what's been going on. I've been enjoying every minute of it when I haven't gone against him and he's had a big game. But I'm going to tell you what, I think the New York Knicks sort of fade in the second half of the season. They finished up strong. Sans the game against Miami. Lynn has been terrific. He's a good player. But here's what happens as Carmelo and Stoudemire and Lynn are on the floor at the same time. First of all, when you've got Lynn and you've got Tyson Chandler running the pick and roll, these star players like Carmelo and Amare, they're not going to be the main key cogs on the pick and roll. What they're going to have to do is accept the fact that they've got to be out of the main part of the play while the pick and roll is happening and stand back and get those open looks with the jump shot and once in a while drive towards the basket. They've got to have that in their makeup. I'm not sure Carmelo does, and I think that's going to take some time to develop. We also saw Jeremy Lin in a step-up game against the Miami Heat, really taking it on the chin. They came after him like nobody else has, and he had a terrible night shooting the basketball, had a hard time getting the shot off, and he does commit a high brand of turnovers. Now, when you look at what Jeremy Lin is on the floor, what opponents have done, their backcourts, their starting backcourts, for New Orleans, Bellini and Vasquez, Brooks and Williams for New Jersey, how about Wade and Chalmers for Miami? Those 6 guards, those 3 starting backcourts, combined to average almost 40 points per game against the New York backcourt. They also combined for 30 assists while committing just 15 turnovers. And with New York's schedule, check it out, coming up in the month of March, I think they're going to find the going tough. My go against in the Eastern Conference in the second half, at least in March, is the New York Knicks.
There you have it. Bet-ons, bet against from the West and from the East. Scott and I have delivered those opinions. Coming up next, it's time to deliver some Money Time opinions. We'll take a look at the opening night following the break on the NBA hardwoods. Coming up right next, right here on Vegas Sports Day.
Hey, I'm Al, man. Is that how you get them to do that all the time? Just sit there and be an ass. Is that it? Hey, I'm Al. Hey, I'm Al Mancini at Top of the Food Chain. You are watching the Vegas Video Network. We got big forks, big spoons. I got a big mouth. I got no guests.
Livestream is your premier place to watch live events on the web, mobile devices, and connected TVs. See new events daily or broadcast your own at livestream.com. Livestream. Be there.
Okay, guys, it's money time. This edition of Money Time is brought to you by Covers.com. Remember, for all the key information you need in every sport, Covers covers the numbers. Let's start tonight in Indianapolis, Indiana, where the Pacers, 6-point home favorites against the Golden State Warriors. And this is an Indiana team that would be the number 3 seed in the East if the season ended today. If the season ended today after basically sneaking into the playoffs last year with the number 8 seed. Big season-to-season improvement for Frank Vogel and company. And it's an interesting spot for Indiana, not necessarily a great one. They come back from the All-Star break. They've had the 5 days off. They play today or tonight and then have 3 more days off before playing again over the weekend. So the question is, does the team come back fully mentally focused for this individual contest? Now, Roy Hibbert seems to think so. He's coming off his first All-Star game appearance, and his quote, "It was a great atmosphere. I can't wait to get back to Indiana and go back to work." But that's not the only quote we're talking about here, Scott.
Yeah, there's a quote from Frank Vogel, the coach, and he basically said that our team has no ceiling. He goes, "I've said that from day one. I know we can play with the best in the league. We've just got to do it on a consistent enough basis to earn one of the league's best records." Vogel went on to say, we are near the top. We want to be at the top. We've got great talent at every position. We're not a megastar team, but we've got stars on our team, and he's right about that. Now, of course, Steph Curry is still dealing with that lingering foot injury, listed as probable for tonight's game. The Pacers having a rough time as chalk, though, only covering 5 of their last 14, I should say, at home, and 3 of 10 as favorites between the spread of 5 and 9.5 points. And as we talk about this game, they're laying a half dozen, Teddy.
Yeah, I mean, Indiana is a team that really lacks that go-to scorer during crunch time. Danny Granger is supposed to be that guy, and Granger's in the midst of his maybe his worst NBA season, even worse than his rookie year. Shooting percentage-wise, he is averaging a career-low 38% and he just hasn't seemed to have found his stroke, and that's given Indiana a lot of problems, obviously, in this point spread range. Now, we have seen at least over the last 5 games where the Pacers have kind of refound their mojo after that losing streak. These two teams, comparable offensive numbers. Both teams is back shooting exactly 43.2% offensively in the last 5 games. Golden State averaging 98, Indiana averaging 101. Very comparable offensive numbers. Defensively, going into the breaks, the Pacers, however, had a clear edge, and the edge on the boards even stronger. Indiana, full 3 percentage better defensively than Golden State in that stretch before the All-Star break. 10.5 points per game fewer allowed for the Pacers, and that rebounding margin, Pacers +8, Golden State -7.2. Indiana with the edge in the paint in these recent contests. But we talked about the spot for Indiana being a question mark. We talked about Danny Granger not being the ideal go-to guy during crunch time. And let's not forget that Golden State, even with Steph Curry, is a question mark tonight. They've been just fine without him, a winning point spread record without Curry on the floor. And the Pacers, in the first meeting between these two teams, had no defensive answers for Curry or Monta Ellis, a factor that may come into play again tonight.
You're right about that. I mean, the two guards, they combined for 37 points, 25 by Ellis in that first matchup. Let's head up to Power Balance Arena, Sacramento, California, as the Utah Jazz open up their second half against the Sacramento Kings. And we've talked about Utah already on today's show and how I feel about them. Here's the deal with this team. First of all, it's a tough spot for the Utah Jazz when they go on the road against anybody. It's a great spot for whoever the home team is when they're hosting the Utah Jazz. That happens to be Sacramento tonight. The Jazz stumbled into the break, guys, falling into last place in the Northwest Division. Only won 3 of their final 13 games straight up. Almost 50-50, 6-7 against the spread. Utah, as I mentioned, not a good road team, 5-9 against the spread away from home. They blew that 16-point lead against Minnesota in the final game before the break. And their coach, Ty Corbett, had this to say: "It's disheartening to us, but you have to learn through it. We play well enough to win these games, but we have to learn how to finish. It's real painful now, and it should hurt. Coming out of the All-Star break, we have to learn our lessons so we don't make these mistakes."
Well, Utah is losing these games because they haven't been able to defend the perimeter. Really ugly 3-point shooting percentages allowed from the Jazz. This is a team that they were third in the league in 3-point defense, allowing 31.3% prior to the last 3 ball games. Their last 3, they've given up 31 of 62 from beyond the arc. The closeouts just haven't been there for a team with relatively tired legs. Now, for Sacramento, this is obviously a team that got the approval or tentative approval for their new arena, which should keep the Kings in Sacramento. And that, in my mind, has a big impact on this ballgame. We are going to see a much rowdier crowd than we normally do at Sacramento Kings games. The Kings Arena has been very, very quiet for extended stretches so far this season. This is one game where the fans are going to come and they're going to make noise. They're going to be really excited. So a home court that I would normally rate in the range of about 2.5 points. Maybe tonight it's worth 3, 3.5, maybe even 4. And the betting markets, however, seem to agree. And now we also have another issue going on with Sacramento in terms of the rotations right now. Keith Smart, the head coach, he's tight in the rotation. Jimmer Fredette, who played in most, I think he only missed 3 games in the first half. Well, he missed one of the last 2 prior to the All-Star break. J.J. Hickson, I don't know if he's a big free agent signing, but he was the Kings' big free agent signing this past offseason. He, too, relegated to the end of the bench. And Smart going down to 8 players against Miami last week. It may not be a bad thing. Francisco Garcia, Donta Green, Chuck Hayes, the only guys coming off the bench for the Kings in that ballgame. And for a team that doesn't have great quality depth, but is finding a way to win some games right now, shortening the bench might not be a bad idea.
And sticking with Keith Smart for one moment, he did say, "I like the rotation that we have, 8 men to 9 men, maybe, but this is where we are with this team right here." In fact, he went on to say, "We've got to find a way to get better on defense all over. We don't have a real shot blocker, so that hurts, but a lot of times it's also just coming down to communications." The Kings are dead last in the NBA. They give up about 102 points per game. They've had problems last year and this year with defensive efficiency. But one thing that I like about this team, they're slowing down a little bit on the offensive end. Not a huge deal thus far, but if you remember last year, this team was in a hurry. They were the 5th most hurried team, if you will, in the NBA when it came to possessions. They are now 8th, getting a little bit better. I like what Keith Smart is doing.
When we come back, it's time to head to the Tuesday night college hoops card as Money Time continues.
Traditional media believes that after about 3 minutes, you'll tune out. Most Vegas media companies think if it doesn't jiggle, you won't tune in. At the Vegas Video Network, we think both are wrong. The Vegas Video Network is the first and only live online broadcast network that specializes in insider news and expert views about Vegas. We combine great storytelling with the ability to watch when and where you want on your computer, mobile device, or television. Discover the real Las Vegas. Visit VegasVideoNetwork.com.
Money Time Part 2, which means we're going to break down the key college games for tonight. And let's start with this ESPN showdown in Bloomington, Indiana. The Michigan State Spartans, minus 2.5-point road chalk against Tom Crean's Hoosiers. And, you know, the first meeting, this is one game that definitely merits some attention when we talk about the first meeting between these two teams, because it was a truly wild affair. The Indiana squad came in, they were sky high. They were 12-0 at the time. That included road wins at NC State, Evansville, a neutral site win over Notre Dame, and of course the upset over number 1 Kentucky. Spartans dominated that game early. They took a 17-point lead, and then they squandered it. Indiana, a 27-5 run on the road in East Lansing. 11 minutes left. Hoosiers are up by 9. So what happens? Izzo turns up the defense. Michigan State, a 20-0 run. So we had a 27-5 run from Indiana and a 20-0 Michigan State run in the second half of that ball game. They eventually won the game. Spartans won the game by 15. But both teams were able to control tempo, were able to control the flow of the game for extended periods of time against their opponent. Now, Spartans had one big edge in that game that led to the 15-point win. They shot really well, 54.7% from the floor compared to 42% for Indiana. They were even on the boards. There were no major turnover issues for either team. And the other thing that Tom Izzo did extremely well in that first meeting, he shut down the big man. Frosh sensation Cody Zeller held to a season-low 4 points in that matchup. Here's a guy who averages more than 15 points per game for the full season.
I was watching that game, and I think it was a combination of Izzo and the Spartans shutting down Zeller, but it was also a case of Crean not using Zeller the same way he is now. If you remember back early on this season, and Zeller, this guy, as far as I'm concerned, for my money, should be getting about 13 to 14 shots per game at least. There were times when he's shooting 5, 6, 7 times per contest, and at times it looked like Indiana was forgetting to try to get the ball to the big man, and I thought it hurt him against the Michigan State Spartans when the Spartans went on that big run in that contest. It was also a great spot for Sparty going into that game. Now, there's a quote from Draymond Green. He says, "We're playing for a lot more than just sharing a Big Ten title right now." And then Tom Izzo follows it up with, "I get paid to make sure people understand you have bigger goals. Whenever you accomplish one, there should be another one. I get paid to never be satisfied, and I let the players know that." Now, Indiana head coach Tom Crean was Tom Izzo's top assistant for a long time. These two know each other. There are no secrets, no surprises between these two basketball teams.
Yeah, of course, the Spartans have clinched a share of the Big Ten title. They're looking for the outright Big Ten title with a win in today's ball game. And, you know, we saw certainly last night, you remember that Kansas-Oklahoma State game, which wasn't necessarily pretty to watch. But we saw a very tired Kansas team coming off a big emotional win. And, boy, that was a huge motivator for the Jayhawks to get that outright Big 12 title. Spartans in position to do that today. And of course, this has been a very one-sided series. Over the last 3 years, Michigan State, 5-0 straight up, 3-2 against the spread against Indiana. That includes wins by 5 and 14 points here at Assembly Halls. Both these teams have been spread beaters this year. If you've been backing the Hoosiers and the Spartans on a regular basis, you've been making money. And Michigan State 18-8 against the number. Indiana 14-9 against the number. But let's not forget the power of this home court. Indiana 16-1 straight up on this floor this year. 8-3 against the spreads. We've seen them win straight up as home dogs against both Kentucky and Ohio State. Looking for home dog win number 3 tonight as the Sparty Spartans come to town.
Well, next up, let's head to Fayetteville, the SEC battle between Ole Miss and Arkansas. And, you know, the Razorbacks, when you talk about this basketball team this season, it's all about home-road dichotomy. I'm not sure that's going to change a lot as the seasons and the years progress because, I mean, that's Mike Anderson's MO. He did the same thing at Columbia. He had his 40 minutes of hell that he learned under Nolan Richardson. And the bottom line was with the Missouri Tigers, they were beatable on the road. You couldn't beat them in front of the home folks. Same thing going on right now with the Arkansas Razorbacks. They just picked up their first road win this past weekend when they beat the Auburn Tigers. Guess who had the Auburn Tigers, by the way? Of course, they shot lights out in that particular basketball game, came from behind to win. They've got some nice home wins. They've beaten Vanderbilt, Michigan, Mississippi State along the way. They also have that crazy loss to Houston back in mid-November. Now, these two teams are tied for 8th place in the SEC standings right now. They're both 6-8 in conference play. They're playing for momentum. They're playing for seeding in the upcoming SEC tournament. Neither squad likely to receive much at-large attention at all. So all these games are important right now for seeding between these two teams.
Yeah, and, you know, you talk about losing, betting against Arkansas, or betting against Arkansas this last weekend. I'll trade you because my loss was worse. I had LSU, and I had them large on Saturday against Ole Miss, and that game was a wrong side. It was the only wrong side I had all weekend, the only loser I had all weekend. But it was a bad one, no question about it. Ole Miss, they're probably the best game they played. Certainly the best game I've seen them play all year. 24-point blowout over LSU. They snapped a 3-game skid. And head coach Andy Kennedy had this to say following that victory. Quote, "They're still a middle of the pack in the SEC as it relates to what happens in New Orleans for the SEC tournament he's talking about. And we are still fighting for position and see if we have any more fight left in us. Tonight for me, it was positive to show these guys still want to play. I thought we came out and did some very good things." They did do some very good things. Look at the senior, Terrence Holloway, talking about that ball game. Quote, "People think we were just going to lay it down, so we just wanted to come out and show people we still have fight in us." Now, Coach Kennedy had a sit-down meeting with his key upperclassmen, Terrence Henry, Nick Williams, Reggie Buckner, Murphy Holloway, after their midweek loss at Tennessee. The message was simple. Everything is going to go through my key players. And what happened? Everything went through the key players. The word got around. Those four players combined 55 points, 21 boards, 6 assists, 6 steals, 4 blocks. Kennedy got what he wanted from that motivational talk. Question is, can Ole Miss carry that momentum forward into a very hostile road environment tonight?
Well, you know, the Ole Miss defense, Teddy, unfortunately for you, and like you were saying, you were on this side, but on the LSU side, but they really shut down the big 7-footer, Justin Hamilton for LSU. He had just 2 points in the game. The first time these two teams matched up, talking about LSU and the Rebels, he scored 23 points. He grabbed 16 boards, so they really shored up their defense inside on the interior against Hamilton. Ole Miss continues to struggle with free throws, something I really look for when it comes to handicapping games, especially when you're talking a point spread that's about a basket or two. And, of course, this one tonight sitting at 2 baskets. This is a team that hits about 60% from the charity stripe. It's hard for me to not only pluck down my money on a team that can't make free throws, but also to suggest to any customer of mine to go ahead and pluck down their hard-earned money. Just too many opportunities that can go against you when a team can't make decent free throw percentages. Arkansas forced 23 turnovers in that first meeting. They didn't allow a single made 3-pointer, believe it or not, and they still lost and failed to cover. Now, they were crushed on the boards in that game. Ole Miss whipped them 48-26, but Ole Miss went on a recent 3-game slide where they were out-rebounded by a total of 27 boards. That's a -9 rebound margin per game. Ole Miss cannot let up when they're boxing out, or they're going to have a rough time against the Arkansas Razorbacks.
But that's not where we're going to go for today's play of the day. We're going to go back to the NBA and see if we can get the job done tonight, taking the 6 with the Golden State Warriors. Thought process here, really live in an awkward spot for Indiana, the first game back and then 3 more days off. Not sure they're going to be fully ready following the All-Star break. And this is a Warriors team 5-3 straight up in their last 8 games, 7-1 against the spread. And you look at some of those losses, they're basically 2 shots away from being 7-1 straight up in those last 8 games. I'm looking for a competitive game here right through the final buzzer. Give me the Warriors plus the 6. That's the Vegas SportsDay play of the day for Tuesday. And that's going to wrap it up for our Tuesday edition. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to spend with us. For Mr. Spreitzer, a.k.a. Mr. Malinsky, job well done. Thank you for filling in for our esteemed host. I'm Ted Savransky. Enjoy the games and good luck. We'll see you again tomorrow.